I love how all the Christmas decorations are up for this video. The timing works so well. Every winter, I just want to play all the winter themed board games, and this just, it fits. I love it. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel today. My name is Carly, and today we're going to be reviewing the brand new title, Borealis Arctic Expeditions from Lucky Duck Games. Borealis is a 2 to 4 player programming game, I think. I think that's kind of how you would describe what's on the table in front of me. Thematically though, you are going out on expeditions trying to capture pictures of animals in their natural habitat. In order to do that, you need to balance your specialists. There are different specialists in different colors. Here you need to balance them in order to take these pictures. Now that's kind of a very general overview of kind of what you're going to be doing thematically in this game. This is a typical review for mine, so I'm going to be going into kind of how the game plays before sharing my thoughts with you. Now, if this is the first video of mine you've seen, welcome to Board Game Buzz. We're so happy to have you here. If you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and doing all the good stuff to support me on the channel, I would really appreciate it. But if you want to hear my thoughts on this brand new title, then just keep watching. All right, so I already kind of touched on the theme. You are leaders of these scientific teams venturing out into the Arctic, again, trying to study and take pictures of these animals that you might meet there. Now, what you're seeing on the overhead camera right now is actually a finished game. This is as if we had just finished, so this is kind of what your board will look like. When you first start, though, you will have no animals. You will just have this board, and you will have a handful of these they're scientists. What are they actually? It's a specialist? I guess they're specialists. I consider them scientists. When the game first begins, you will have one of each of these specialists on each of these 3 zones that you can see. So your board will look essentially kind of something like this, again, with these animals being gone. And you will be dealt a hand of 4 cards. Okay, these cards are essentially the animals that you are trying to take pictures of or basically line into these particular rows. Now, there are lots of things to consider when you're playing this game. So let's just start on the basic level. On your turn, you will select one of the cards from your hands and add it to one of these 3 rows. There's a little bit of a catch though, because in order to play cards from your hand, you need to pay for them, or I think it's thematically those specific scientists are studying this particular animal, so you have to move them to adjacent regions so they can actually observe the animal. It's a very themeless game. Okay, I'm going to be just straight up with you. There's not a ton of theme to this game, but in order to play this owl, if I want to play an owl here, I would have to move 2 pinks, one pink this direction and the other pink this direction. And again, those scientists have to come from that particular row. So I actually cannot do that right now because I don't have 2 pink scientific people here. So let's look at another example in my hand. Sure, let's do this. So I have this polar bear here. If I wanted to place this polar bear here, for example, again, I can pay for it. I can move 1 yellow worker this direction and 1 pink worker that direction. There are a handful of different reasons on why your placement in this game matters so much. One of the reasons is if there are these 3 tracks here at the bottom, if your animal that you just placed has a vehicle type that matches one in the next most empty slot on the region that you placed it in, you will then be able to move your little flag marker down. The further down these tracks you go, the more points it will be worth at the end of the game. So you're always kind of trying to move these down. Another thing that you're kind of keeping in mind when you're making these when you're slotting animals into these zones is based on the same amount of animals that you have in a particular zone that will also be worth points at the end of the game. For example, this one here that's all full of seals, this whole row will be worth 21 points for me at the end of the game. This row, because it has multiple different animals, what you would do is you would say, okay, I've got 2 puffins, which will be worth 1 point. I have 1 polar bear, which is worth 0 points. And then I have 1 fox, which is worth 0 points. You can kind of see, you kind of want to match like animals in certain rows to get the most points. But maybe you don't want to actually match too much or go for that completely, because there actually are additional ways to score points with these scoring cards. Now, the base game comes with a lot, so you will shuffle them up and deal deal 2 for each game. So these are always kind of shifting and changing. For example, this particular game says you will get 6 points for each location with no animals of the same species adjacent to each other. So, for example, this, I wouldn't get any points for that because I have the same species completely adjacent to each other, but maybe you might want to layer your cards a little bit more in order to go for this scoring opportunity at the end of the game. And then on top of that, there are also objectives that players are kind of racing for. In this current example, I actually have 2 that have already been claimed, but there's this one here that says have 4 identical vehicles in play. So in this current example, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 submarines, so I could actually go ahead and claim this objective. Now what makes these interesting is once there's, like I said, there's 3 at the beginning of the game that are dealt out. And there are points that are placed on all of them once somebody has claimed them, right? So I just claimed this, what was this called? This organized expedition right here. Now because I've claimed it, this is the final round that this will be claimed in. The next time the next round starts, this will actually be out of play and players will not have the opportunity to get it. So it is definitely on a timer. You want to try your best to claim those because if someone claims it before you and you are unable to claim it before that time limit runs out, then you lose out on those points. Something else you want to keep in mind is some of these cards also have this kind of navigational symbol on them that will also be worth points at the end of the game. So you can kind of see there's lots of different reasons for why you might want to place certain animals in certain zones. And again, it always comes back to your specialists, because if maybe I really want to place this owl here, but at the current moment it's completely unavailable for me. So I would have to place an animal in this zone, for example, to hopefully bump pink over here. So then I could actually place my owl there. It has a lot of that decision making, right? That programming that, okay, if I'm able to place here, then that will bump my specialists to these particular zones, which then I can use to bump them back, which then I can use to bump them again. You also do have the opportunity to give up one of your points that you may have acquired to wipe and refresh the card. So that's another interesting decision, is do you hold on to your points, or kind of when is it worth it to get a whole new set of cards? That's essentially what you're doing on your turn. However, as you may notice, there are going to be times where your scientists are slowly going to be bumped out to these outer regions. When it comes to the point where you do not have scientists to pay for the cards in your hand, there's really nothing you can do. That is what's going to cause a regroup action. What's going to happen then is you can choose to discard and draw as either 1, 0 up to 4 cards in your hand. So you can kind of get a whole new set of cards if you want to. Another thing that you will do though is you will take your scientists from your camps. These are called your camps. You will take them, getting 1 point for each scientist that was in your camp. And then you will choose one of your camps to then dump your scientists kind of back into. So it's nice. It's a way to get a little bit of extra points and also bring your scientists kind of back into the game and back into your programming phase. So that's what you can do on your turn. You can observe, which is essentially lay a card down into one of these rows, or you can choose to regroup. That's a turn, and then it'll go into next player's turn, and it will continue going until the end of the game is triggered, which is when one of your 3 rows of somebody's 3 rows has 7 cards in it. Players will complete the current round and then move on to scoring, which again, we already talked about, right? We're going to go through and score up how far down your flags are on these tracks. You will go through each of your rows and score up just the inherent animal points because of that. You will also have your endgame scoring objectives that you will score as well as any additional points that you may have gotten. And then whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. All right, so hopefully that kind of gives you a general idea of how Borealis Arctic Expedition plays out. I keep coming back to this term, but this definitely felt like a programming game to me. You're always having to think 1 or 2 steps ahead, trying to set yourself up for the most optimal moves and the most optimal way that you can spend these very limited resources or scientists that you have. This game really impressed me from the very first moment I started playing, because when I set up the game and started learning it, this is a very thin rulebook, a rulebook which is actually very well thought out, it's very well planned out, it's very well explained. This is a very easy game to dive into, so huge props for that, Lucky Duck Games, just in and of itself. But you open it and it's a very simple rulebook, as you can see. Very, very simple, again, very laid out. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know if there's going to be much game here, honestly. And even kind of just the basic look, I don't know, something about the look of it didn't quite capture me. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it didn't hook me, as I kind of like that hook when sometimes I just see a game on the table and I don't know anything about it and I'm just immediately hooked. This just simply didn't do that right off the bat for me. So I kind of had lower expectations going into it, I'm going to be honest. But then when we started playing, I was so pleasantly surprised at how much crunch there actually is to this game with the programming that's happening with your scientists. I absolutely love games where I really do have to think ahead and try to set myself up for future moves. And this game that's basically what this game is at its heart, is you are constantly, every single move that you are doing, every animal that you're playing into these zones, you are playing in order to play optimally, right? You are playing in such a way that you can then move and bump these people into certain zones, which then you can bump and be able to set yourself up for those future moves. It really just offered so much more crunch than I was originally expecting. There's not a lot of theme in this game. There's really not. It's a very abstract game, but it does it really well, and it has a really interesting crunch to it, because not only are you trying to balance your scientists, you're also trying to figure out which animals would be the most optimal move, again, with your scientists, but also with your vehicles that you are trying to match up and line up to try to get the most points down on these tracks as well. There is inherently a little bit of a luck factor to this game, just based on the animals that come out, right? But there is a way to mitigate that, because you can choose to give up points to basically completely refresh this board right here. And when you choose to regroup, you do have the opportunity, if you don't really like any of the cards in your hands, if you realize, oh, they're not really going to work for me right now, you can choose to simply get rid of your cards and draw a whole new hand of cards. So you really can kind of go through this deck, searching and hunting for the particular animals you need, along with the vehicles and the specific type of researchers that you need as well. For a game that was as easy to set up, right? There's very minimal components to this game. It took me about 4 minutes to sit down and read this rule book to understand this game. So it's easy to set up, easy to teach, easy to learn, but it has a really good kind of optimization puzzle to it. If you like trying to figure out how to be the most efficient and most optimal that you can, then I feel like this is the game. This is a game that you would really like and enjoy, especially when you take into account the different scoring and objectives that will be switched through and changed from game to game. So it gives you a little bit of variety in regards to that. I will say that for me, I wish that there was a little bit more interaction between players. Really, the only interaction that happens is if you see an animal card that you really want, you're just hoping and praying that nobody else gets that animal card right before you. That's really the only level of interaction. It felt a little bit multiplayer solitaire to me, a tad too much. I wish there would have been some way to interact with other players around the table. It does play good at all player counts. I will say, if you are playing at lower player counts, that angst of, oh, I really hope so-and-so doesn't get that card. If I'm just playing a 2-player game, most likely they won't get that card, right? I mean, it's a 1 in 4 chance that they will get that card. However, if you're playing with more players around the table, that angst is way more present, because you have 3 other people for that to get to if a card comes out that you really like. So that's the only level of interaction, and the only thing that I felt really changed between player counts is just this kind of just felt a little bit more like, oh my goodness, they're gonna get the card that I want. Felt a little bit more dangerous. It kind of gave me a little bit more of a heart attack at 4 players versus the lower player count. Another thing is, because it does play it does feel very much like a multiplayer solitaire game. I'm actually shocked that it doesn't have a solo mode. This would be one of the easiest. I mean, even in my head right now, I can probably just start playing this and think of a solo mode to do. I'm just shocked it didn't have any sort of solo mode to it, because I feel like it would play really good as a solo game where you could just sit and really try your best to optimize. I think this would work really good as a solo game, so I'm kind of disappointed that it doesn't have a solo mode to it. Something else that's interesting though is one of the things that you're balancing, not only with your scientists having to pay for the cards, but you're also trying to balance when is the best time to recall or do that regroup action. And the reason why is because maybe in your head you're thinking, oh, you just wait until the last possible second, right? Until you really can't do anything else, because then when you regroup, you get all those points. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? In this current example, I would get 7 points for regrouping. Well, in my opinion, you might not actually want to wait to that moment, because when you do regroup, you can't just distribute these people out as you please. They all have to go to one of these 3 camps. So if you have a bunch of people, you might not actually want to wait to that moment, because redistributing them to a camp might not actually give you, again, that it doesn't really help you from an optimization standpoint, because it's going to take you that much longer, even if you did dump them in the middle, right? Sure, you dump them in the middle, maybe they do slowly work their way out again, but again, it won't help you optimize. So it's just kind of an interesting give and take of when am I laying down a card, and then when am I choosing to regroup to then place exactly where I need to so I can continue my engine going efficiently. Having said that, I don't know how much replayability this game has for me. Again, the scoring and the objectives definitely help, but I can see, and I've only played this game, have I played it 4 times now? I think I played it 4 times now. So for me right now, like, I would still jump into this game, but I just don't know how long of a shelf life it has. It's not a game where I'd sit down and be like, oh, this is a new favorite of mine. It's staying in my collection forever. I think this is a fun optimization puzzle that currently has a place in my collection. How long it lasts, I don't know. I don't see it being a forever game for me personally. I wish there was a little bit more theme. I wish there was a little bit more interaction between players. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Coming back to rating on this game, I'm going to be giving Borealis a 7.5. Like I said, as of right now, it is currently staying in my collection. We will probably be pulling it out a decent amount this winter. I really loved this optimization puzzle that's happening over here. If you like, and again, for a game that's easy to dive into, that's easy to teach, you could play this really with anybody. The crunch is just there. The crunch is there in this game. There's just a couple stuff pulling it down for me, but overall, I really did enjoy this one. All right, so there are my thoughts on the brand new title Borealis Arctic Expedition from Lucky Duck Games. I wanted to give them a huge shout out for kind of sending me this early reviewer copy of the game for me to get my hands on and share my thoughts with you today. And again, if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing and doing all the good stuff to support me, I would really appreciate it. But until next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you later.